This is Personal Injury Court.
Good day, everyone. This is the matter of Moore versus Ryan. Ms. Moore, it's my understanding that you are suing Ms. Ryan for severe injuries that you sustained when you were in her horse stable.
Yes, Your Honor.
You're asking this court to award you $100,000 for past medicals, $25,000 for future medicals for dental, $7,040 for lost wages, $300,000 for pain and suffering, for a total award of $432,040. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Ryan, it's your position that you did nothing wrong. If Ms. Moore was careful, she would not have been injured. This is all her fault. Is that right?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, well, let's get into the legal sauce. Tell me how you ended up at this horse stable.
Well, Your Honor, I've been working with horses since I was a little girl. I worked with my dad, showing horses, training them at my uncle's farm. We had horses there, and there I am on Snowflake when I was about 12.
Kind of a life passion.
Trained her, yep. I started 15 years ago training and jumping horses, and I went to buy a saddle. A friend of mine said that she had a saddle, Miss Ryan, for sale, so I went over and bought the saddle from her. We got to talking. She said that she needed some help at her stable, so I volunteered Saturdays. I've been there about a month.
And Miss Ryan, tell me about your horse stable. How long have you had this?
Yes, Your Honor. I've owned the stable for about 20 years, and I also have been around horses all of my life.
So both of y'all are pretty dedicated horse people.
That's me with my current horse, York. Yep.
Okay, York.
Yes, Your Honor. Yep.
Okay, you all pick good names for your horses. well, I mean,
Thank you.
How did this happen?
Well, Your Honor, I had groomed Meatloaf, and I was walking and I noticed my phone had fallen out of my pocket, and I looked back and it was laying on the ground. So I went back to pick it up, and just as I bent down, it startled Meatloaf, and she sidestepped and kicked me right in the mouth. And I felt blood filling up my mouth, and I had teeth. I was spitting teeth out. It was gagging me, and I fell on the ground, and I passed out. Yes, that's.
Oh.
That's it.
I know it's hard to look at that.
I passed out, and the next thing I know, I'm in the ambulance on the way to the hospital.
So you lost a bunch of teeth?
I lost 7 teeth, Your Honor. It's going to cost $5,000 to $7,000 a piece to have them fixed. I'm going through the transplant right now of having the implants done, and they're doing bone grafts. It's just excruciatingly painful. I have to be sedated in order to do that. It's terrible. I have this mental block of going into the stable now around the horses, and that's my livelihood, Your Honor.
So, Ms. Moore, I've got to ask this. You lost a bunch of teeth when Meatloaf kicked you in the face.
Yes.
Are you wearing temporary teeth right now?
Yes, they've got a temporary plate set up in there, and it's really difficult to eat. I have problems trying to swallow. I have to eat a lot of soups and just broth and stuff because it's just hard to.
I can see the pain on your face.
I can't chew.
Miss Ryan,
yes,
Meatloaf kicks Miss Moore. It's your horse stable. Why wouldn't this be your fault?
Your Honor, I was working with another horse over at the barn, and I heard a rider scream. I looked up and saw Miss Moore on the ground and Meatloaf right there. I ran over to her and immediately took the reins on Meatloaf and walked her over to another trainer to get her out of the way and to take her to a barn.
Well, what do you think happened? Did Meatloaf just go crazy?
No, Your Honor. I don't think Meatloaf went crazy at all. Every rider and trainer knows not to go behind a horse, and
that is not true.
Miss Moore,
you can walk behind a horse if you do it properly.
The judge asked me a question. Miss Moore already testified she's had years and years of experience with horses.
Exactly, so I know how to walk behind a horse.
So she should have known not to go behind a horse.
That is not a rule.
And I think what happened is...
Please respect the process, okay? Just direct your comments to me.
Your Honor, I think what happened is that she bent down to pick up her phone.
That's not...
And
you know yourself, as a trainer, you can walk behind a horse properly and it does not react.
But you bent down behind
listen now, I mean, maybe that's the general rule. I had a coworker years ago who walked up to a horse but didn't touch it as she walked from the back. The horse turned and completely destroyed her face.
If she scares it, but I know how to walk behind a horse, and if you know, it's not a rule that you don't walk behind a horse. The rules are, you know how to do it.
So if you're trained to do it, How does this happen?
Because the horse is a dangerous horse, and I wasn't
It is not a
explained
dangerous
this
horse, Your
when
Honor. It is
I
not.
took over. I've been working with this horse for 4 weeks, 4 hours.
Why do you call
This
a horse
knows-
that you're working with dangerous?
Because it's done this before.
Okay.
2 weeks before my incident, Meatloaf kicked another person in the head.
But Ms. Moore, you've been working with Meatloaf for 4 weeks, right?
Only 4
That's right,
hours,
Your
Your
Honor.
Honor, on Saturday.
But don't you get to know the horse?
Yes.
You do a little, but if you're not told that this horse has a temperament, just
It
training
does
and
not.
trying
It
to
does
get
not
to
have
know-
a temperament.
Obviously, it does if we've
And
both been hurt.
She was
Address
I
me.
there.
worked with horses
Address
my
me.
whole life, and I've never got kicked.
Ladies, we're going to have order in this court. Tell me about Meatloaf's personality. Every animal has a personality.
Meatloaf has a great personality. She is being trained, and that's why Miss Moore was there to train her. And after 4 weeks, she should have known what might spook her or not spook her. And the problem is she bent down behind the horse.
But if Meatloaf
predict.
is kicking folks,
Don't forget, Your Honor, you have to have a respect for a horse.
well, they're
As a
very
tiny-
powerful animals.
That's
Yes,
correct.
and that's why you need to know how to train them, as
and
I
you do. And you do, right?
Yes.
But
So tell
she
me
should
about
have
your
known not to.
injuries.
My injuries, Your Honor, I have facial lacerations, which are going to require plastic surgery, Your Honor. I'm going to have 7 teeth implanted.
That's a very painful procedure.
It is very painful, and it's just a time-consuming. It's going to take months to have this done where I can actually eat.
You're probably having headaches and everything else.
I am having horrible headaches. The pain medication keeps me almost in a lethargic state, and then when I'm not on it, I'm in horrible pain.
I see you're
I'm
asking
having
this
trouble
court for your lost
driving,
wages.
And yes, I can't work. I can't work in the state. People think I'm a monster.
How are you going to pay these medicals?
I can't.
You see, Miss Ryan, this is a big deal for her.
I understand that, Your Honor. All I'm telling the court is that it wasn't my fault. And it's not my responsibility, and I appreciate that she got hurt, but it's not, you take a risk when you come around horses like that.
I want to
and
get
train
this
them.
right. You knew that Meatloaf had kicked someone else before it kicked Miss Moore.
Right, but...
Hold on.
That is, yes, Your Honor.
Why wouldn't you just tell her, hey, Meatloaf was kicking folks a couple of weeks ago or whenever it was?
Well, Meatloaf wasn't really kicking folks, Your Honor.
Meatloaf did
Meatloaf
kick
got
people.
scared.
Kicked her right in the head.
And kicking is a natural reaction for a horse when they get scared
It is
or
not
frightened.
a natural reaction.
And let me finish.
A
address me,
horse's
please.
natural reaction is
Address
to flee.
me, please.
Let me finish.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Address me, please.
And-
A horse's natural reaction is to flee.
I
Before
say
you were
something?
kicked, did you know that Meatloaf was dangerous?
No one told
not
me.
dangerous,
If
Your
I
Honor.
would have known that, I would have treated this animal much differently.
Your Honor, the reason Meatloaf did not flee is because they were in a corridor going from one building to another, and there was another horse coming toward them.
Ms.
So
Moore.
what Miss Moore should have done, is taken the reins and pulled Meatloaf around so that Meatloaf could see her when she bent down to
Which
pick
I
up her
would have
phone.
done if I knew
didn't
she
do
was a
that.
dangerous animal.
Ladies, talk to me. Talk to me. So, Miss Moore, you brought a witness with you, Miss Belinda Evans.
Yes, sir.
Miss Evans, would you stand and come to the podium? Now, you have a bit of a shiner on your head.
Yes, Your Honor.
Did Meatloaf do that to you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Tell me about that.
I was at the stables that day. My boyfriend and I were there, and he was taking some videos for social media, and I had decided to take Meatloaf out for some exercise. I had heard some word around the barn that she could be a bit of a handful, but I'd never really had any issues with her, so...
Yes, ma'am.
So I just took her out, and I was walking her. It had snowed the night before, and I slipped on a slippery patch of this icy snow mixture and lost my balance and fell. But as I fell, Meatloaf lashed out to the side directly at me and kicked me right in the head. I heard a crack, and I didn't know if it was my skull or my helmet. There was blood in my eyes. I didn't know what was going on, and it was terrifying. Luckily, my boyfriend was there with me.
Now, your boyfriend caught
And
this on tape,
Yes,
didn't
he actually filmed the entire thing. I brought the video with me to show the court.
Now, I want to play it, but I won't do it unless you tell me I can. Are you okay with me playing this tape?
Yeah, I just probably won't watch. It's still pretty difficult for me to see, but you can play so that...
Okay, we're going
you
to
can
put
see
it up on the plasma here. This is you and Meatloaf.
Yes.
All right. That's amazing you were not killed. Miss Ryan, that looks like a dangerous horse to me.
Your Honor,
this is 2 weeks before. How is this not your fault?
the horse was reacting to being scared, and that's a natural reaction for a
as you can
horse to
see
kick
in
out.
the
So the
video.
way that Meatloaf reacted there, when Meatloaf kicks that hind leg and strikes Miss Evans in the face, that was a fear or startle reaction?
That's right, Your Honor.
No.
That's
Your
right.
Honor,
and that's
That is
what
not
horses
a
do when
natural
they're
reaction
they're
for a
afraid.
horse.
That looked evil. I want to see that again.
Your Honor, I don't think horses are evil like
A
that.
natural reaction would have
Did
been
you
for
see
her
how
to
the
fly.
horse turned and
It turned-
deliberately kicked her?
That
It
was
turned because it got
directly at my
scared because
head.
of her fall, and then if you notice, it ran off. It did not stay in
The
it.
Now,
natural
Miss
reaction
Moore
would have
said
been
that
to
when a
flight.
horse is startled, generally, they flee first before an attack.
Your Honor, the court has to keep in mind that a horse is big and a horse's hoof is hard and a horse has a shoe on their hoof.
You really
And so-
could be sued twice by both of these ladies. Ms. Ryan, whether that is a startle reaction or an angry, evil horse, don't you think you should have told Miss Moore about it?
Your Honor, every rider and every trainer knows when they come into a horse stable, they have to be cautious around the animals.
But
I
you're
was.
more cautious, wouldn't you think, when you're told 2 weeks before a horse nearly took a lady's head off, right?
Well, I wouldn't characterize it as that,
Is
Your Honor,
that
but-
extreme?
You wouldn't.
Yeah.
You wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, you're healing, and I
Well, maybe if
understand
you
it.
had
You got
this on
kicked,
your
but
forehead,
Miss
you
Moore.
might think about it a little differently.
We need to have order. Miss Moore, if you had known that Meatloaf had kicked Miss Evans, what would you have done differently?
Then I would have led the horse around because I know it's a dangerous animal.
should always
if
lead the horse
if
around.
Miss Ryan had warned you,
Yes.
you would have done things differently and been able to avoid this.
Right.
Your Honor, every horse has the potential to kick. It's not that Meatloaf is aggressive or dangerous.
I mean,
Every-
like,
But
it's
all
aggressive
horses
and
aren't the
dangerous.
same, right?
Obviously, we've both been hurt.
It's similar to an argument about dogs, right? All dogs have teeth and the ability to bite, but only some dogs bite. And if this was a dog that bit somebody 2 weeks ago, the law says you got to tell folks if they don't know. The essence of your duty to tell her is she doesn't know what danger she's walking into, but you do.
I don't know what the law says about my duty when a horse kicks, but
Yes, ma'am.
being a seasoned trainer, Miss Moore should know that all horses have the propensity to kick. That's typical of horses. That doesn't mean they're vicious.
Ladies, I think I've heard what I need to hear. I'm ready to render my decision. Folks, in every personal injury case, the plaintiff, you, Miss Moore, you've got to prove 3 things. You've got to prove that Miss Ryan was wrong and that her wrong caused your harm. We need not talk about your harm much to understand that it is beyond proof that you have been changed forever. This should not have turned out this way for you. You've put up evidence in this case that Meatloaf actually nearly killed somebody 2 weeks before with the same kind of kick. I was nauseous watching that video. But the severity of your injuries isn't the only thing I have to consider. I've got to consider whether Miss Ryan is legally responsible. And what that does, it calls into play the legal concept of knowledge of the hazard. Horses are wild animals. They're not like cats and dogs. They are unpredictable. They're big, powerful animals, but it raises the duty for the owner. If you know that this horse is dangerous, you've got to tell people who are around it because they cannot appreciate the danger unless you warn them. But we don't have the average user, the average person around the horse. We've got a horse trainer, an expert. Clearly, you grew up with horses, you understand horses, but more particularly, you understand this horse because you were working with this horse. That causes me to consider what did you know or what should you have known? Certainly, you have to know that horses kick. You have to know that. What that does, though, is it makes you have the same kind of knowledge that Miss Ryan has. When Meatloaf kicked, that was a violent act. However, it was the act of a wild animal, not necessarily something that's beyond your experience. Here, where you have equal knowledge of the danger, there is no duty to warn because she's not telling you anything you don't already know. And when you have equal knowledge of the danger, the law says Miss Ryan wins. Here, if I could rule based on how I feel, I would give you $10 million. But how I feel is not part of the legal calculus. The legal calculus is when two parties have equal knowledge, the defendant wins. And therefore, I rule in your favor, Miss Ryan, despite how I feel. But the law commands it. That is my final verdict, and this matter is adjourned. Our attorneys across America just viewed this case for the first time. Let's hear what Andrew Finkelstein has to say.
Ms. Moore knew of the inherent dangers of working with horses, as she was a trainer for years before the incident. The defendant did not have a duty to warn or protect her from common dangers in horse-related activities because of her knowledge and experience around horses. The plaintiff knew and assumed the risk of injury and unfortunately suffered a devastating injury because she did not protect herself.